بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطاهرين أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الحميد وقوله الحق أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قال ربنا الذي يعطى كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, it's a great pleasure and privilege to be with you again today and continuing our series of discussions that we've entitled as Islamic Perspectives on Modern Day Issues. Yesterday we started a discussion of, we had the discussion of freedom and whether we were indeed free to act according to our own wills, or everything had been predetermined for us. So we have this idea of jabr and ikhtiyar. Jabr and tafawud. God has created us, He's left us on this earth, and now we're now free to do whatever we want, was one idea. The other idea was, no, we're fully compelled. Everything is designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're simply actors playing in this play, in this production. We have no say in our destiny, in our qismat. We have no say. It's all preordained. And we established yesterday through a saying from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, that actually the viewpoint of the Ahl Bayt is that we are free to choose, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put certain restrictions. He's put certain commandments and certain prohibitions on us, and as long as we abide by them, that is what is meant by qadar, or by of what is predetermined in that sense, in terms of that is a command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on us, but we are free to choose. Today we're going to move the subject on. So that was a historical Islamic perspective. The first two arguments were from Mu'tazilites and the Ash'arites, and then providing the Islamic perspective. So those arguments date from roughly the time of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, and they haven't and those ideas and those themes have kind of remained there within the Islamic world. Today we're going to move the discussion on, and we're going to talk about personal freedom in a Western context. I'm going to draw, and for those of you that are very interested in this subject, I'm largely going to draw the material from the work of Bakr al-Sadr. The English translation is called Contemporary Man and the Social Problem. It's available on most of the Islamic and the Shia websites. So Shahid Bakr al-Sadr, the work is called Contemporary Man and the Social Problem. So this work is almost, strange enough, I was thinking it was saying about 20 years old. It's not, it's almost 50 years old, this work. And it just shows the great mind of Shahid Bakr al-Sadr, that he could perceive the problems that you and I were going to face almost 50 years ago. And he'd written and discussed them at great lengths. The work is largely focused on social freedom, but he has a wonderful section about sort of personal freedom in there, which we'll elaborate on, both the personal and social freedom. Shahid Bakr al-Sadr, and for that matter, all philosophers and all philosophers, all great thinkers have discussed the idea, the subject of what is the objective of human beings. What is our goal on this earth? And it doesn't matter whether they're Islamic or non-Islamic thinkers, they all have discussed this matter at great length. And they've all come to a simple conclusion, or a very, whilst it's simple in words, it's difficult to describe and to theorize, but that's the idea that the objective of human beings is to achieve happiness. How we define happiness and what happiness means is left down to the individual, and is left down to the different philosophers and thinkers over time. Human happiness, its aim is, and the idea is very simple, that if we're not happy, and if we're not content, if I use another word for happiness, then we're not living a fulfilled life on this earth. Okay, so this idea dates back to the ancient Greeks. It may even go beyond them. So certainly the ancient Greeks discussed this subject at great length, and they quite clearly came out and defined that the objective of human beings is to achieve happiness. Whether happiness in this world or happiness in the hereafter is we can leave open for discussion. Now, Shahid Bakr Sadr traces out very intelligently how what we call freedom in the West has been derived over many years and centuries, and I think it's worthwhile highlighting this before we start providing an Islamic perspective. Because he goes on and he labels this freedom, he gives it a very particular title, which really caught my eye. And then I said, those of you that have time, please do go and read the book, Contemporary Man and the Social Problem, because he comes up with a very interesting label for freedom that we have here in the West. What Shahid Bakr Sadr points out is that within, roughly speaking, 400 or 500 years ago, as the human intellect, especially in the West, started to mature, as people started to go beyond the kind of the medieval system and started to observe the nature around them, started to discover that the Earth was not the center of the universe, that it actually sort of it revolved around the sun through Copernicus. And as explorers started to go around to discover the Americas through Christopher Columbus, all of these things started to challenge the existing order. And what was the existing order? It was the church. And in the West, as these people began to challenge the existing beliefs and belief system, the church cracked down on them. And this is really important. This is really, really important for where we are today. A lot of people underestimate this power, but the church cracked down on them. And we have a lot of these theories. We have movies on the subject. The idea that a lot of these intellects that discovered, a lot of these intellectual people that discovered the real truth of what the world was outside, but were being suppressed by the church. They went underground. There was various movements. There were some people call them the Illuminatis, whatever the words are, whatever the truth is. But there were intellects out there. There were free thinkers that realized that the orthodox beliefs of the time were incorrect. The truth and the reality around them was totally different. Now remember, the inspiration for a lot of them was as the Mongols had invaded the Islamic world, a lot of the books that existed in Baghdad, which was Dar al-Hikmah, Baghdad and other places in the Islamic world, slowly got moved over to the West. And the West then began studying them and translating them. So this intellectual movement that started in the West, a lot of it stemmed from these Muslim works, so stemmed from the works of Muslim scholars. That's really important to note that point, that a lot of that thought process started from that. But this skeptical movement, which lasted for a considerable amount of time, eventually resulting in the French Revolution, made people question the authority that was on top of them. So the church, the kings, and the rulers. And it made them push for freedom, for personal freedom and political freedom. Okay. But it had an unintended consequence. And this is the beauty of Shahid Sadr's analysis. It had a very unintended consequence. And that was this, because they were resisted by the church and they were oppressed by the church, these thinkers went underground, but they also no longer considered anything sacred. They lost all respect for religion. Okay, so these thoughts, these beliefs were there, and over 100 to 200 years, if not longer, there were intellectuals that were having these debates, these discussions, a lot of them in private for fear for their own lives, because they were not allowed to have an open discussion in a debate. Okay, so it went underground, and it was waiting for that moment that it could truly come to the forefront. A lot of people think that the intellectual movement was part of the Industrial Revolution that happened in the Western world about 200 years ago. But in actual fact, what Shahid Sadr observes is really, really that true freedom that we see today, the personal freedom that we see today, stems from the Second World War, from the post-Second World War period. What happened in the Second World War was the elite order collapsed because they had to rely upon the ordinary person. Ordinary people had to go and fight, and many died. And eventually, when they came back from those wars in all of their respective countries, they said, no, we need a change. And there was a change after that. Before that, regardless of what people say over those parliamentary elections, women only got their votes in this country into the 1930s, right? So the speed of change was very slow. But post-Second World War, all of a sudden, this movement that was hidden, that had been suppressed for so many years, finally came to the fore and said, no, we as people deserve the freedom, and we as people no longer hold anything sacred. Shahid Bakr al-Sadr describes this as negative freedom. He says they are free, but they have become free by rejecting everything. The church, the state, the social order, they rejected everything. And when you start rejecting everything, nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing is holy anymore. Nothing is valued anymore. The natural consequences of this is that what we have today, the capitalistic freedom, is that everyone is free to do, each individual is free to do whatever they want. And there are very little controls in place. And we don't necessarily say that there should be controls, but we're just saying that, that the individual is now free to do whatever he wants. The only restriction on that individual, is the restriction of, is the restriction that they cannot harm any others, or they cannot impeach upon anyone else's freedom. I pause there because this is really important to understand the development of freedom, of Western freedom. Because we all ask, and we all see it, and well, I see it in the youth, we've seen it on the streets in the Middle East, we see it on the streets of Pakistan, we've seen it in all of these countries. We have these discussions in our own inner circles amongst the youth, is freedom. Islam is an oppressive religion, it doesn't give you the freedom. We want freedom, we want azadi, we should be free to do whatever we want. We should be free to do whatever we want. But you can see how that's happened. The first set of intellectual challenges from people saw, no, hold on a minute, what you describe as your religious order or the world order or the natural order doesn't actually fit with scientific discoveries. Doesn't fit to what we can see with our own two eyes, with what we can observe through telescopes. No, you must remain quiet, otherwise we'll suppress you, we'll kill you. And many of them were killed, so they went underground and they waited for their opportunity. And eventually it came after the Second World War and it exploded. Now people were free. And the final piece to that jigsaw was the democratic movement that started off the Second World War. But what freedom did this bring? What is the freedom that we have today? So we're free to do whatever we want, as long as we don't impede on someone else's freedom. That's the basic principle that we have, right? Yes, there are rules and laws and etc., etc. But my basic freedom is, in my house, I can do whatever I want. So if I want to drink alcohol in my house, I'm free to do that. Who are you and I to restrict someone who wants to drink alcohol? It's a personal freedom. I sit in my house, I drink alcohol. I can even go on the street. If I want to drink alcohol, I can drink it on the street. That is a personal freedom. Why would that be an objection? Why should we as Muslims raise an objection to that? So the other person, they are free to do whatever they want. Why are you raising any objections to what the other person is doing? It's personal freedom. You and I have no right to interfere in someone else's life. These arguments you're hearing, even in our circles, in Muslim circles. You're hearing, no, don't speak. He's free to, it's up to them. It's up to them. No, don't say anything. They're free to do whatever they want. But that person that is drinking alcohol, that is destroying their liver, that is ruining their relationship, that is destroying their health, surely it's incumbent on us to approach them and say, listen, what are you doing? Go and get some treatment. You've become an alcoholic. It's affecting you physically, mentally. But we can't. It's their freedom of choice. They can do whatever they want. Now you may say, listen, hold on a minute. You've taken an extreme example of someone who's at the edges of society. What about the rest of us who are free in this country, or not just in the Muslim community, but in the wider community, are free to do whatever they want? Shahid Bakr al-Sadr makes a very interesting observation. He says, no, they're not free, because what they've really done is they've replaced their previous chains with new chains. What are the new chains? They've replaced the previous chains of the church, the kings, the maharajas, depending on which part of the world we're from. Right? They've replaced all of that, or the feudal lords. They've replaced all of that with new lords, with new gods, with new restrictions. Because we all need a target. We all need an objective in life. So today, that freedom has driven us towards setting other goals, setting other objectives for ourselves. For the average person, it's shopping. Shopping makes them happy. Remember, the objective always was happiness, right? The philosophers always said the objective is happiness. And Islam has no problem with that. Happiness is, but it's when you want that happiness. I mean, what makes us genuinely happy is what Islam defines differently. Right? It's strange I say that, because quite often in our community, we always think that we have to be miserable, right? No, Islam's objective is to achieve happiness, contentment. If I use a different word, contentment. Mutma'in. That is happiness. When I'm mutma'in, I'm happy. I have no pressure, no spiritual, intellectual, no physical pressure on me when I'm mutma'in. But that is happiness. It's another word for happiness. That is what the philosophers talk about, right? But today, in order to achieve our objectives, we've set ourselves different goals. And in order to remain happy, what are our goals today? Because we are free, we can choose whatever goals we want. But what have most people ended up with? Most people are happy with shopping. The more they can do, the better. The more goods they can buy, the more clothes they can buy, the better they look. Every week, a new costume is coming out. Something fresh is being ordered. For the men amongst you, it's a new car. It's the material goods. I have the latest TV. I have the latest phone. I have the latest this. I have the latest that. It's the material goods. So and this is the observation of Bakr al-Sadr, we have replaced, and without doubt, individual freedom has resulted in us replacing the religious gods of the past with the materialistic gods of today. So capitalism has driven us towards that. And we've made the richest person on earth the goal and objective for ourselves. We have these rich lists. Everyone's, oh, he's up by this much, he's down by that much. The founder of Amazon has made 76 billion in the last few months. Or so-and-so has made this. Or did you see the size of so-and-so? So we made these our goals. Our personal freedom has driven us to making these our goals. Now freedom says you can do whatever you want, as long as you don't infringe on other people. But eventually there will be a clash, because eventually there has to be certain, if I'm trying to become the most dominant, especially economically, then eventually there will be a clash. We'll come on to that tomorrow, inshallah, the social freedom element. But other people are happy not just with the material goods. Some people are happy now in a digital world. There is no material good. They're happy with the number of likes they have on Facebook, with the number of viewers they have on YouTube, with the number of likes they have on TikTok, and etc. That has become their goal and their objective. And they're going to spend all their time trying to achieve that. Because freedom says you can do that. There's no guidelines anymore. There's no thinking about what is right for us and what is wrong for us. I'm free. If that's what the next guy is doing, I want to copy. So the society becomes scattered. We're no longer bound together. The worst and the extreme example of this freedom that we've seen in the last 12 months, if not in the last few years, is the fact that now the transgender movement that we have seen today is saying that certain people can now call, whether they're male, can call themselves female. So if he is a male, he can tomorrow turn up and say, no, I now want to be called she or a female in classes. So for young kids. So young children are being taught they have the freedom to choose their sex, even though that is not what they're born with, even though biologically that is not what they have. So these are the consequence of absolute freedom to do whatever you want. As I said, we'll talk about social freedom and the restrictions and the pressure that puts on the individual. But today we're talking about personal freedom. So personal freedom post-Second World War just saw an explosion. And because it'd been suppressed for so many years, just saw an explosion. And as Bakr Hassan said, it was a negative freedom. It was a rejection of everything. Nothing was sacred anymore. Religion was not sacred. Family ties were no longer sacred. Okay? My biological makeup is no longer sacred. What I'm born as is no longer sacred. Right? No, we can challenge that as well. And we can set whatever goals and objectives we want. As long as everyone else adheres to them and agrees with them, those are our goals and objectives. So that is the freedom. Now, obviously, Shaykh Bakr Sadr goes on to present the Islamic perspective. And he raises a number of objections, a number of points in light of the teachings of the Holy Ahlul Bayt, and in particular with some specific verses of the Holy Quran. Let me recite some of these objections and recite some of the verses of the Holy Quran. He starts off by saying, what distinguishes us from all other creatures on this earth is that we as human beings can go over and above our physical desires. Freedom means I can pursue my physical desires. I can do whatever I want to please myself. Yeah, that is freedom. That is the consequence of freedom. I can do whatever I want to pursue my personal and physical desire. If that is uncontained, then the likelihood is I will pursue more the physical side. And at that point, what is the difference between me and an animal? If an animal can eat something that is out there, and hunt something, it will do it. Today, I have that freedom that I can do and pursue any of my desires out there, as long as there is no restrictions and no one's trying to control me. And that's what you've seen. So he's saying, no, human beings are different. We have an intellect, and the intellect tells us to pursue something that is of a higher goal. So the simple pursuit of human desires, of physical desires, if that's what freedom is, then freedom has missed the point. We human beings are totally different. When we of course acknowledge that many people have gained that freedom, have done wonderful things. But he goes on, he says, okay, fine. Even if we say that people have gone beyond the physical and they are looking as a human beings at an intellectual level, some of the goals they've set themselves under this freedom are some of the goals that Quran has already rejected as the incorrect goals. Surah Al-Imran, which is Surah number 3, verse 14. زُيِّنَ النَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنَّطَارَةِ من الذهب والفضة والخيل المصومات والأنعام والحرث ذلك متاع الحياة الدنيا والله عند حسن المآب. The love of desires of women and sons. So the attraction to the opposite sex. We live in a promiscuous society. You're free to do whatever you want. That is the consequences of freedom. Desire of sons. Sons here means children, power, wealth. In the historical times, the more sons you had, the more powerful you were. So the desire for a strong power base. Today, we don't need many sons. We just need a strong power base. We just need our supporters. Effectively, they're the sons of the politicians. So as long as they can turn out there's certain movement to support them, they'll get elected. Hoarded treasures of gold and silver. What is the objective? What is our objective today? It's to get the bigger and bigger bank balance. Gold and silver is replaced with money, with paper money. That is our objective today. وَالْعَنَامُ وَالْحَرْثِ. Cattle. Cattle is the capital goods of the past, capital good of today. We want more capital so we can do more things, we can develop more companies, we can buy more property. So property. Horses are mentioned in the verse. Bred horses. Well, your desire for most men is the faster car, the bigger car. And these things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, these things, these things are seen to be made to seem fair to men. All of a sudden we think these are our goals and objectives. We forget where we've come from, we forget where we're going to end up, and our objective becomes this short time period that we're on this earth. So where have we come from? Where are we going? We forget those. And all of a sudden my freedom says, I'm going to focus on this. So these desires and these goals were always there. It's just now they've been multiplied 20 times. Now everyone is talking about it. Now on TikTok, on YouTube, you see, oh, look at that beautiful house. Or they bling their car. All of these things are out there now. Because those are our goals and objectives of our society. Because that's what freedom, unfettered freedom has allowed. I'm not talking freedom in terms of restricting someone, sorry, intellectually and spiritually. Okay? Islam never came to chain people, you must do this, must do. He said, listen, I want to open your mind, I want to open your heart. Please do keep that distinction clear as you listen to this speech. Okay? So these objectives were always there. If you free them, you multiply it 20 times, that becomes the objective of the whole society. And this life becomes what people think are is the most important thing. Wallahu indahu husnul muhab. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the good goal. With Him is your final destiny. That's where you're going to end up with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Shaheed Bahakar al-Sadr continues, he says, and we've touched on this already, it says, in this free world, in this personal freedom that we all have, what if a person is going off the rails? Drugs, alcohol. By the way, there's a big epidemic amongst young, especially white men in their 20s and 30s and then most of them tend to come from very affluent backgrounds of suicide. I've now heard from at least 2 or 3 different friends who had, talking about English friends, who've had family members commit suicide. And when you look into their backgrounds, they were very affluent, well educated, but some of them had drug problems. Others have had where parents have separated, have had personal issues like that, and it's resulted in them committing suicide. So there is still, at the heart of society, there's still problems. But we're forced by this push for personal freedom not to interfere, not to speak, not to do amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar. And by the way, there's ways of doing that. It's not you constantly, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you're bad, he's good. No, we're not here to judge. We're here to try to help if we can help. We're here to try to guide if we can guide. And by the way, when you can't guide, just step away. Yeah, just don't. Some people just constantly, and they end up giving the wrong advice. Okay, so be careful, but where you can help, help. Speak up on a personal, individual level. Help people. But personal freedom says, no, you can't help. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares in Surah Sa'd, Surah number 38, verse number 28, أَمْ نَجْعَلُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ كَالْمُفْسِدِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَمْ نَجْعَلُ الْمُتَّقِينَ كَالْفُجَّارِ. Shall we treat those who believe and do good like the mischief makers in the earth, or shall we make those who guard against evil like the wicked? We have to have a criteria. We have to say what is good and bad. We cannot just leave it to personal freedom and personal choice. What was bad 20 years ago, all of a sudden is now becoming good. Yeah, we have to be able to speak up and object to certain things. Because all of a sudden, people are using personal freedom to oppress the voices of others, which is almost contradictory. You're using the term personal freedom to oppress others from speaking up. And those of you who are familiar with the debates that have happened over the last 12 months know what I'm alluding to. So they can't be the same. A good person and a bad person cannot be the same. How can they be treated the same? Both in this world and the hereafter. Hereafter we know, but in this world, how can they be treated the same? There has to be a criteria. We have to allow good people to merge. In the past, it was the politicians had to pretend to be good. The politicians even have stopped pretending to be good because they know they've got the voice, the economic power to get elected. We see that. Again, we'll come on to the political and social aspects tomorrow, inshallah. I'm conscious of time, so let me finish off with the last few points. And we touched on this verse of the Holy Quran a few nights back. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فَتَرَى اللَّهَ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. So be steadfast in the faith in all uprightness. The natural way of Allah, the fitrah, has been instilled in all people. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. So there's a certain fitrah, I alluded to, that people of very affluent backgrounds. We saw this, I think, only in the last year or so. A Bollywood actor with over 120 million, or whatever the number was, followers, commit suicide. They're still trying to work out why he's committed suicide. So popular. So popularity no longer is the criteria. Something inside broke in that man. There's a fitrah. There's certain things inside our souls that if you don't nourish, you don't take care of. It doesn't matter about your personal freedom. Psychologically and emotionally, you'll break down. But hold on a minute, I'm giving you total freedom. You live in the West. You can do whatever you want. You can come and go as you please. But you are having all these emotional and physical and psychological problems because we're not adhering. We're not paying attention to the real soul, the real spirit, the real fitrah that exists inside ourselves. Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, and we touched on this verse as well yesterday, when he was talking to the fellow prisoners. He said to him, Ya sahib al-sijni, a'arbab al-mutafarriquna khair, a'amillahu al-wahid al-qahhar. All my companions, is multiple lords better or a single lord? When I set myself multiple objectives, I need to be the most popular on YouTube. I need to have the greatest wealth. I need to have be popular. I need to be have the greatest amounts of likes. You know, when that becomes your goal, when all of those things become your goal, then you cannot devote yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't have that. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So, my dear brothers and sisters, I leave you with these thoughts. That personal freedom, it's great, it's valued, but it has to be anchored with your fitrah. You have to become aware of yourself. You have to become aware of the fact that you have started from here, you will end up here, and you'll have a permanent abode over there with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has put you on this earth. He has created you with certain desires and with a certain requirement. And if you don't fulfill that, you will break down. It doesn't matter how much freedom, you will psychologically and spiritually break down. I come back to the Dua Arafat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I want to finish with a few lines from it, where the Imam beautifully sums up what we should be looking for. And in the translation, in the dua itself, it says the Imam at this point of the dua supplication, he would go at this point of supplication, his eyes would be shedding tears. This is Imam Hussein on the plains of Arafat, and then he would say, Allahumma aj'alni akhshaka ka'anna arak was'idni bitaqwak wa la tushkani bima'siyatik wa khayra li fi qada'ik. Oh Allah, please make me fear you as if I can see you. These are the most important lines coming up. وَصَائِدْنِي بِتَقْوَاكَ. Make me happy by fearing you. Not fearing, taqwa is the wrong translation, but make me happy by making me God-centric. Divert myself towards you. Make me happy by making me God-centric. وَلَا تُشْكِنِي بِمَعْصِيَتِكَ. Do not make me unhappy by disobeying you. I want to be unhappy if I ever disobey you. My criteria in the world of personal freedom has now changed. My criteria is, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala require of me? And I want mutmainna qalb. I want my soul, I want my inner being to be content, and therefore I will be happy. So happiness is still my goal. Oh Allah, you know my fitrah, you have created it. Now make me desire that fitrah. Make me do the actions that are required. Make me do the amals that are required. Make my mindset as such that I am content and I am happy. And make me unhappy when I do an action, when I have a thought that goes against what you've desired of me. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.